Good.
Hi there. Hi, Tylette. Are you saying go ahead and get started at this point?
Yeah, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Terry Ocaña. I'm the IT director from Chippewa County, Minnesota, quite a small county on the central west border of Minnesota. Our citizen count is actually fairly low at around 10,000 with about 150 employees. So I come from a small town or small county perspective. My background previous to working here, I spent a few years in a smaller county than this, if you can believe it. But then previous to that, I worked in the Portland metro area in Oregon as an IT director for a grain brokerage company in a 4-state area. So we downsized our life intentionally, and I took a position in a small county because we were just looking to downsize our life. So here I am, and I've been involved with NACo for a little bit more than a year. Darren, do you want to introduce yourself and give our attendees an idea of your background in the county you work with?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Darren May. I'm the CISO for Tarrant County. Our location is right in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. We are the third largest county in Texas, populace-wise, behind Harris County in Houston and Dallas County. About 2 million residents. Our IT department is about 200 strong. We've got about 80 buildings around Tarrant County, of which I've seen all of. And we're under attack day and night. So it's a job with a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. So, Darren, I want to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm going to, after you have a chance to answer them from a large county perspective, I'm going to answer those questions from a small county perspective. And then I'd like to open it up to the group, probably because we've got about a dozen attendees or so. It would be helpful if people would use the raise hand feature, but if not, you can unmute yourself and just communicate. But Darren, what have, in the last 6 months, if we just think about the last 6 months, what have you found to be some of the most challenging issues within the cybersecurity realm?
So the first thing that comes to mind is the state of Texas made Zoom available to all of our courts and judges. It's not an application that we had cleared or were using. We were a go-to meeting county. And so we had to adopt it. We had to start patching it. We had to keep it in good shape. Start explaining to people how to lock their rooms or their meeting places. The biggest thing was just having to keep up with it. And then the second thing that comes to mind is 40 to 50% of our workforce starting to work from home, where we did not have a work from home policy in the beginning. So extending our security policies to the house, as well as keeping up with applications that we had not authorized to bring into the county, were two really immediate demands on my security teams.
Yeah, and from a small county perspective, we found very quickly one of the challenges that we ran into in the last 6 months is similar to your Zoom challenge. We, as a small county, we were not utilizing a lot of video conference technology other than as attendees. So we ended up in a situation where we weren't prepared to host video conferences. So within the first week of our state shutdown, we had a lot of users and department managers that were just picking their own software as fast as they could. So we had a lot of free versions of Zoom, of WebEx. I think there was another one that got downloaded very quickly, and we had to we were very much behind the 8 ball and had to jump in front of it, which was rough. Because we had a couple of agencies that started using some free versions of Zoom. I think a free version of, I can't remember, there was another one that jumped out there early, and they started hosting meetings very quickly with their clients or other agencies, and then we had to jump in front of it and start shutting some of those down, and it became a real security issue from the HIPAA and even our CGIS, which was not as big of a deal, but definitely HIPAA. I think the other issue that we really ran into as a small agency, and I know this was a big agency issue also, but a lot of work from home. We weren't really set up to work from home. We have a lot of rural residents because of our location. So we ended up with a lot of individuals that were working from home themselves, and then potentially with a partner that lived at home with them, and or 1, 2, or 3 students that were distance learning. So the minimum broadband specs were just not supporting some of our VPN requirements. So we actually had found ourselves in a position to have to reduce our VPN encryption in order to allow them to continue working from home productively, which put us in a vulnerable place and trying to figure out how to scramble to catch up to that. I want to reach out to, we've got a couple of other questions that we want to line up in a short period of time here, but I want to reach out to some other counties. Are there 2 or 3 counties out there that would like to share what some of their most challenging instances have been in the last 6 months, and maybe what you did to overcome that? You can just go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce who you are. I'm going to call on people if you don't introduce yourself.
This is Craig Sekash. I work for Dunn County in Menominee, Wisconsin. And probably along the same lines as you, Terry, we face the same things. We're a little bit bigger county than you, but our biggest challenge was getting the available equipment into the hands of our remote workers, because we had a very small laptop deployment before the whole COVID situation hit. So, but fortunately enough, many of our desktops had built-in wireless, so we were able to reconfigure and basically send them on their way with their desktop. Since then, we've been buying lots of laptops and, replacing the desktops out with the laptops where it makes sense, this definitely looks like it's going to be a long-term issue. So, being able to have our people work productively, for the long term is our goal right now. Fortunately enough, the state of Wisconsin, there's a couple different backbone fiber that you can jump on and get some really nice high bandwidth. So we had jumped on that a couple years ago. So basically we don't experience any of the latency like you experience with your VPN users. So we've been very fortunate there. So all in all, I guess just trying to keep everybody safe and keep them working and productive.
Thanks, Craig. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Daniel Krebs with Monroe County, New York. I'm not going to say anything you haven't already heard before. Making sure our employees can work remotely and the challenges that posed. We were able to leverage membership in the EIISAC to throw out CrowdStrike to a number of platforms for free, which is good because we didn't have the funding to pay for additional McAfee licenses. That's probably been our biggest challenge, is expanding the security on the remote workers with little or no additional funding. And to that end, we've been relying a lot on our vendors who have came through for complimentary proof of concept that they've just let us ride until we can come up with a longer game plan. So in addition to the scanning and the monitoring, we also had a shortage of laptops and remote devices, and we've been able to ramp up again through Cisco providing additional AnyConnect licensing, and also being able to implement a reverse proxy allowing for remote desktop from personal devices. and then funding. So all of the above.
Very good. Hey, Darren, I don't know if this question is going to piggyback off of your previous answers, but what do you think, what would you claim as the projects with the most progress in the last 6 months within the cybersecurity arena?
You know, that's a good question. I think a lot of security awareness has been top of mind for us. To meet the House bill that was passed where we were mandated to have everyone in our county go through security awareness, we went from door-to-door campaigns to filming and pushing it out to the desktop with attestation. The second thing that was a real big challenge, and we got lucky, we had just brought up Microsoft's cloud management gateway prior to COVID. So what that allowed us to do is when everybody started taking their computers home and being away from the office for extended periods, it has allowed us to keep patches applied to all of our endpoints without having them come in or try to do it across a VPN. So we got very lucky. I pulled the trigger on it in January, and as we started to send people home in March, we were able to keep our compliance in the 90% plus range.
Nice. So I'm kind of on probably the almost polar opposite end of the spectrum as you. I've been in this role for just a little over a year, and my predecessor, unfortunately, was in a position that he kind of went into coast mode for the last couple of years that he was here. So when I stepped into this role, and I knew this walking into the role, which was partly why I wanted to take the position because of the challenge, I was walking into a role where we were probably a good 5 years backwards in security and network engineering. So I really spent my first 6 to 8 months evaluating the infrastructure. There was almost no documentation left behind, so I had to do a lot of manual discovery. And we walked in, when I walked in, we had about 150 end user devices, and 148 of those were on Windows 7 that had not been patched for almost a year. So in that first 8 months, it was a lot of discovery. I had started planning to re-engineer the network and build in some modern cybersecurity technology. And we were just starting to plan those projects in February, March timeframe. And then, of course, pandemic hit, and we ended up in scramble mode. So in the last 6 months, I'll say that our progress has really been, we've engineered our entire internal network, upgraded all of our switches, brought in 2 new firewalls, and then we've started to roll into a new Active Directory with compliant group policy objects. So we've done that in the last 6 months. But now that's been the re-engineer side. So engineering, as you know, is just one component. Now we're in implementation where we've actually just started to roll out new devices, re-imaging those devices, and actually migrating users to Teams, a new Active Directory, new firewall policies. I think partly for us, the most progress that we've made is really getting the end users aware of security, that security is not a dictatorship from the IT department top down, because that's the way that they were trained. We've had to really move into engaging our end users that cybersecurity is a holistic approach, kind of really to take the idea of what Jyoti was talking about, that we've had to relearn, re-educate our users to not only unlearn what they thought cybersecurity was, but to learn what cybersecurity should be and to not be afraid of the IT department. And we can put all kinds of devices and bells and whistles in place, but if the end user doesn't understand the difference of when to click and when not to click and the importance, we all know that the end user is really the weakest link in our environment. So that's been our biggest progress, is end user education and
Yeah.
getting them on board as a holistic approach. So is there anybody here that's kind of attending that can give some ideas on what their the most progress that they've seen in the last 6 months within the cybersecurity arena? Bill, you dropped something off in the chat. Bill, if you're still here, Nixon, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, hopefully I'm off of mute.
Yep, there we are. I hear you.
Great. Yeah, one of the challenges we had is we use Microsoft Office, so a lot of people can work on county devices offline using Microsoft Office because they can get to Outlook and OneDrive and team sites and things like that. So we had a challenge with how do we deploy patches and make sure those devices are staying up to date, even if they're not on the county network via VPN. So we're in the process of rolling out IBCM. I think I have the acronym right. But it's part of the Microsoft SCCM sort of suite that lets us push out patches to a device, a county device that is not connected to VPN, but is connected to the internet. So
is that part of their mobile device management, or is that something separate?
It's something separate from what I understand. I don't have the full details, and we've been working with a partner to get that done. It was something that was always planned.
It sounds very similar to their cloud management gateway or their
yes,
CMG.
Yeah, this is an alternative to that cloud management gateway.
Okay. And how was that deployment? Did that go smooth and it functioning well for users?
We are piloting it right now.
Okay.
So it is we're in process and working through some certificate issues and routing issues and things like that. But it looks like it's going to meet our needs, and that's been part of the biggest challenge that we've had, is just educating end users about more security awareness. And luckily I think the pandemic has helped us because everybody's sort of in on it together.
Yeah.
And really paying attention to security these days, which is very different than what it was before, which is, you technology people, just leave me alone and let me do my job. Now they need us to do their job.
Right. You know, Bill, Darren, it's interesting. You guys are using two different Microsoft products, but very similar. And we are, we're going to be exploring, I shouldn't say exploring, we've already purchased the products, but we're going to work with an engineer for some assistance on splitting our VPN tunnel so that users don't have to get all of their traffic through the county network on VPN. And Bill, it sounds like you did some of that with OneDrive and SharePoint, and then adding this product on top of it with IBCM and cloud management. You're able to kind of split the traffic so users don't have to be full-time connected or all traffic going through the VPN. Have you found that has, it still enables transparency to your users, and you have a single pane of glass for your administrators to actually see endpoints that aren't necessarily connected to the VPN?
So, and I think Bill said it too, we are on Office 365, or now as it's called M365. We are in the government community cloud. So I'm fortunate to have a couple of threat hunters, but what that gives them the ability to do is full content searches. We look at impossible travel. So we use that security and compliance that's within M365 to really give us more visibility and be more proactive.
Yeah. Yeah, that split tunnel idea that we're looking at right now, which we're going to roll out in the next 30 days, we're going to be enabling multi-factor authentication for people that aren't going through the VPN to our M365 portal. So just kind of interesting. And Bill did just drop in the chat that they split tunneled late in March. So that's something that we're working on as well because of some of the bandwidth issues for our users. We've got about 10 minutes left here, about 12 minutes left. So Darren, I'm curious, what do you think are the most significant changes in you or your agency's cybersecurity approach? And I'd like to say in the last 6 months, and then to go even further back, look all the way back to 5 years if you can remember. What do you think are the major significant differences in your philosophy or your approach to cybersecurity in 6 months and 5 years?
6 months has been the pandemic. Going back 5 years is a good spot because I came to the county 6 years ago, been in IT 40 years, but led security in the corporate world for 12 years before coming to the county. When I got to Tarrant County, I noticed it was my first government gig, and county and corporate are two different animals.
Yeah.
In corporate America, we had everything locked down. In county, nothing was locked down except pornography and gambling, right?
Yeah.
So it took me 3 years. I went door to door. We called it our door-to-door campaign. Went to all 80 buildings, talked to over 4,700 people at their convenience. Didn't want them to have to drive or walk. I went to them and we spoke for 20, 30 minutes on security, trying to change the county's culture.
Yeah.
And to do that, we led with security at home, because even Dale Carnegie said people are interested in themselves first. So our first 2 slides were on home security and home computer security, and then we led into county security. And it took 3 long years to start changing the culture, getting people to realize you have to be safe, and getting them to call into the help desk.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very similar. So I spent most of my career, I don't have 40 years logged in yet. I'm at about 25, but
I started when I was 2.
You're looking good then. I spent most of my time in the private sector, so a very different approach, clearly. One of the things that I also spent most of my time in a metro area and then moved into a rural environment, which again is a very different culture. I would say in the last 6 months, my biggest cybersecurity shift has been less about securing my infrastructure internal to a county building and more about securing how do I transition our data to not just being within a county building, but securing that data into a cloud resource that is a little bit more open to my users from a more flexible point of entry for the users, whether that's, in an office cloud, which is primarily what we're using right now. And then, so that's really been our heavy shift in the last 6 months is less focus on external threats coming into the network and more about how do I secure data that is in a cloud environment that's being touched from multiple points of entry outside of our network. 5 years ago, I would very much agree with you. I think my shift 5 years ago was more from the standpoint of changing culture, where users thought of cybersecurity, at least in the environment that I was working, users thought of cybersecurity as something that happened in one office, in one building, and really trying to educate our users that cybersecurity was something that started when they woke up in the morning, and it involved their personal cell phone, their personal computer, what happened at home, and it became part of their integral life. And spending a lot of time trying to build relationships with people and teaching them that cybersecurity was about their social media, was about how they picked up the phone and answered questions when somebody would talk to them on the phone if they didn't know them. Being aware, situational awareness of who's wearing a vendor name tag and might be roaming around an inside locked office building with a laptop and whether they belonged or not. I think that was really my shift about 5 years ago. So the change has been quite significant, I think. I would like to also add on top of that, that I think small counties, and Darren, you may have a different perspective for big counties, but small counties have tended to have this culture, we're too small mentality. We're too small for hackers to care about. We're too small for people to really be concerned about coming in and hacking us. Who cares about coming in and hacking property tax data or or whatever records that the government has? We're not big business. We're not credit cards. We're not banking. And we really had to educate our users that we, as a small county, we have indirect and direct connections with external agencies and all the way up to the state. So a hacker's perspective is it easier for me to hack the back door of the state that has multiple millions of dollars for security at the state level? Or is it easier to hack Jane Doe or John Doe at a rural county that has a backdoor connection directly to the state? And that really woke some people up. It's kind of like locking and deadbolting your front door, but leaving the back kitchen door open. And that was a big mentality shift. Did anybody else have some kind of input on that type of mentality or shifts over the last 6 months to 5 years from a cybersecurity approach?
I'll just add in, it's somewhat related. We've been seeing a lot of fraudulent unemployment claims that are going through.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they're across the state, it's really bad, and it's even happening within the county. And we did an investigation within the county to make sure none of our data was leaking. But we've used that opportunity, especially with Cybersecurity Month, to again help educate users. Is what can they do to make sure that their information isn't out there, both county related work that they're doing, but also personally at home. So encouraging people not to respond to those lovely Facebook posts about, what's your 10 favorite movies and what was your first car and all that other type of stuff. Education, I think, is key. We can put as much security in place and do that layered security, but all it takes is one person to do something wrong. And we've also been reacting to what happened with Tyler Technology, since we use them for our records and tax administration. So that's of course a concern with malware. And then Garmin is located near us, and they got hit with a malware attack too. So there's been a lot of local news about malware, which has helped us communicate the message.
Yeah. Bill, something that you mentioned, I have a great story. I think social engineering has played a big part in cybersecurity breaches lately as well. About 3 years ago, I had a county commissioner give me a call, and he said, "Terry, I just got a voicemail, and I'm pretty confident that it wasn't somebody on your team, but the voicemail that he got on his cell phone was an individual called him, spoke perfect English, and said, Bill, this is so-and-so from the IT department. We have your new social services iPad for your social services board meeting agendas ready to go. We just need your email password so we can get that last bit set up." And that all came from social engineering. Somebody was able to arrive at the fact that he was a county commissioner. He was on a social services welfare board. And they were expecting, they knew that the county was in a digital paperless initiative. So all of that information came from public resources online, and they found his cell phone number and called him to exploit that. Fortunately, we had been sending out articles about social engineering and what that looked like, so he was aware of it before it happened. But I think it was a real opportunity that, had we not been proactively doing that, it could have been very dangerous. We've got a couple last minutes here, and I want to just kind of end with this and then give Darren a chance to kind of share some last thoughts before we close out. I want to make sure that people are starting to really shift their mentality, and also educating their boards and the people that actually approve your budgets. Cybersecurity needs to no longer be considered a project with a finish line. Cybersecurity has to start falling into the realm and being analogous to a highway department, in which not from an infrastructure standpoint necessarily, but in the same light that your highway or your road and bridge department, projects become perpetual. You will have your initial project, maybe you're initially tarring a road, something of that sort, but once the road is finished, it's no longer finished. Now it runs into maintenance mode, and then you have to start taking a look at what you're going to replace or move in 4 to 5 to 10 years. Cybersecurity needs to fall into that. It's no longer a project with a finish line, but it's a perpetual project, and we have to really educate our board and our county administrators that's how we have to start considering security. Darren, do you have any last thoughts? We've got a couple of minutes here and before people have to leave.
Yeah, just kind of building on what you said, it is ongoing. A lot of things, talking about what I believe Jothy said, there are so many things we don't have control of. We don't control the 0 days, some of the applications and operating system vulnerabilities that show up every day. So I teach my team to stay on their toes, be offensive as much as possible. And then I teach our end users to question everything and do not think because it's just little old you that they're not coming after you. They're looking at any email, any zip code, and any computer that's touching the internet. So we all have to be vigilant.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at time, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and close this meeting up, and Tylette's going to finish the recording. Tylette, thank you for holding the controls, and Abbas, I appreciate that. But we'll close this up and then jump back to the NACovirtual.org and rejoin the main meeting as soon as you can. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the session.
Thank you, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank
You're
you, ma'am.
welcome.
Have a good day.
You too.